Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, here with another horror movie review. This time it's a Giallo film, which I don't think I've really talked about before, so it might be the first one. Well, no, I did do Bay of Blood, so this is one of the first ones. This is another Mario Bava film. This is one of his earliest examples of what he'd be known for, and that is Blood and Black Lace, which came out, and this says 1963. I've also seen 64 and 65, early 60s. Now, Blood and Black Lace, this is known as one of the earliest Giallo films ever, and one of the most influential. A lot of people will say The Girl Who Knew Too Much was the first Giallo, also Mario Bava. Well, I don't think I've ever discussed Giallo before. So, Giallo is, it's the Italian word for yellow, because Italian murder mystery books were printed with yellow paperbacks. Giallo films are murder mysteries with a little bit of horror. Sometimes they're straightforward horror films that, deals with murder mystery. They have usually intense violence and gore. There's a lot of tropes that go with it, like, the black-gloved, white-masked killer, usually going around killing women. They usually have very strange titles, like this one's simple, Blood and Black Lace. It's about fashion models. But sometimes you get ones like Dario Argento's debut film, The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, or Four Flies on Grey Velvet, Black Belly of the Tarantula. They don't all have animal titles. A lot of them do, though, like Don't Torture a Duckling, Lizard in a Woman's Skin by Lucio Fulci. Lucio Fulci also did The New York Ripper. Sometimes they're just as sleazy as some sleazy slasher films, like The New York Ripper. So Giallo is sort of like the precursor for slasher films. They're kind of like Italian slasher films, but there's more emphasis on the mystery. And the cinematography is huge, especially with Bava's films, because Mario Bava used to be a cinematographer, or rather a set designer. So he really knew how to design a set before he'd shoot it. And if you've seen Italian movies like Suspiria, that's probably the best example. Blood and Black Lace obviously came before that, Mario Bava's films. Just the lighting, the colors. Again, Suspiria is the best example, but they're usually very dark, and there'll be like lighting so that it'll be like purple lights on the ceiling, or like a purple light on the ceiling, or reds or yellows or blues. There could be very bright yellow couches with like a super bright red phone next to it, or bright blue curtains. There's very vibrant colors and just very eye-catching set designs. Usually very beautiful music. Of course, where this is one of the progenitors, it's a little different. This has more of like a suspense thriller type soundtrack. I do like this movie. I didn't like it as much as Bava's own Bay of Blood. I didn't like it as much as other Giallos, like say Fulci's Don't Torture a Duckling, New York Ripper, Sergio Martino's Torso, or Argento's Bird with the Crystal Plumage. But again, I guess The Girl Who Knew Too Much might be a little too much of a genesis. This really helped establish what a Giallo film is. And pretty much what the story is there's also another thing is it establishes a type of setting. Another reason why slasher films take a lot from this. Like in Halloween, the setting was babysitters' houses. Friday the 13th, it was a summer camp. Burning, summer camp. Sleepaway camp, summer camp. Lots of summer camps. Or like My Bloody Valentine, it was a coal mine. Here, it is a big mansion of high fashion. There's all these fashion models who are being killed off one by one because corruption has been released. Like drug addiction, abortion, infidelities, personal sins. And one girl has kept a diary about everybody's personal business. So there's this killer going around with trench coat, fedora, black gloves, and a white featureless mask, fabric mask, which is very noir, which I think Giallo took a lot from noir. A lot of Giallos use that as a look for their killer, and just goes around killing these women. It's not the bloodiest or the goriest. Again, this was in the early 60s, so it's not going to be as shocking. Some of the deaths were pretty brutal for the time, but you get like strangling, there's a stabbing, and also back in the early 60s, that I think there was more emphasis on, say, like set design and cinematography, that the acting is still a bit over the top. Like a strangling, there's a lot of like grabbing and shaking and stuff. There's a stabbing, there's a drowning. But you get some where like, you look at this thing, I know it's a drawing, or you look at like this, it's like the killer catches this one girl in an antique shop or an antique place. And there's like this medieval like plate put over your arm. And there's like these 3 prongs, and he like smashes it into her face. You don't see it, but the implication is heavy. So another thing about Giallo is that the kills are more stylized. A lot of times, like with Fulci or Argento, you're going to get the gore. You're going to get the full impact. But a lot of them just go with implication. There's another one where the girl has burnt the diary, so the killer takes her away somewhere because the cops are coming. And I don't know if you can see what this is, but the hand on that bright red thing that just looks like a red light, that's a wood stove. The killer's like putting her hand on it. And that's another thing, like what I mean by bright colors. Like in the movie, it's a little more clear that you can tell it's like a metal wood stove. But this scene's pretty brutal and graphic. Like he then puts her face up to it. I mean, you don't really get a whole lot with the investigation. I mean, they realize that all these women have all worked together under the same employer, so they arrest a lot of the guys that have worked in the agency. And then, since this is a mystery, I'm just going to say spoilers right now. So if you're getting into Giallo, this is one that you should start out with. So if you haven't seen it yet, come back after you've seen it. But I'm going to go ahead with spoilers just for the sake of the review. You find out that there's actually 2 killers. It is the manager and sort of his newer lover. He killed one group of girls. She killed another one to provide an alibi for him. And then, they end up turning on each other. She goes to kill one last girl. He bangs on the door pretending to be police. He knew that she would try to go down through slide down the storm pipe, which he sabotaged so she would fall. She knew it was him. So, like, when she's all banged up, she goes to meet him, and then she kills him, then collapses next to him. Ends pretty abruptly. You don't get to see any kind of aftermath. That's another thing with Giallos, is usually when the killer's dead, that's when the movie ends. I know I've been talking kind of fast, and like I'm trying to get through the review, but this movie wasn't as memorable as other ones. I mean, I enjoyed it, but it definitely feels different. It doesn't feel like a 70s Giallo. It still feels like some parts look like what's left over from the 50s with a little bit of 60s nuances. Another thing about Giallos is that they're usually very dark, so they can play with the lighting and stuff like that. There's two shots in the daytime that it just looks bland and it's kind of like hurts your eyes a little bit. So when you see people outside during the daytime, it's just like flat and bland. But I will say the camera work and everything is very well done. The kills for the time, some of them were pretty gruesome for the time. I definitely see how this is a progenitor to a genre because, especially being Mario Bava, I mean, he's known for having some of the most gruesome ones next to Fulci, especially. I had to kind of laugh because I know that Italian films, they'll shoot first and then they'll add audio later, or at least that's the way they used to. Well, during the final scene of the movie, there's no synchronization with audio and video. I mean, their lips are moving with no audio, and then the dubbing comes in when their lips aren't moving. So, little imperfections, but it's an old movie. I definitely appreciate it. I didn't enjoy it as much. Like I said, I didn't hate it. I wasn't bored. But I definitely like what this spawned, which was later Giallos and definitely the 80s slasher films. I heard someone say that pretty much if you took this movie and Psycho, since Psycho came out 3 or 4 years before this, that definitely came out in 1960. This one doesn't seem to be sure when it came out. It's like if those two movies got together and had a baby, it would be the slasher genre. And it makes sense. So Blood and Black Lace, I would say this is definitely something you need to start with for Giallos. Definitely something you need to see. It's just not one of the best I've seen. So for Room 237, that's it for that. Thank you.